Hello and welcome to You Asked For It. I am your host, Ann Page. Thank you today to Sweet Dreams Furniture in Brunswick for this beautiful set of furniture. They have furniture for every need and their outdoor selection for the summer is grand. Thank you also to the House of Logan for this beautiful dress I'm wearing today and the jewelry that complements it. House of Logan is in Camden, Boothbay Harbor, and Bath, and their clothes are lovely. And lastly, thank you, Heidi at Bath Hair Incorporated, for doing my hair today. I love it. Thank you, Heidi. My guest today, I'm so excited about, is Peter Kelliher. Now, you may recall at the beginning of each of these shows, there's some beautiful flute music. That music was played live for our first recording here in the studio by Peter. I met Peter a number of months ago at a musical event in Brunswick. And when I heard his music, I couldn't believe it. I absolutely love what he does with these flutes. It's enchanting, it's inspirational, it's soulful, and I think it's very healing. The amazing thing about it is that he handcrafts these flutes in his own business, Birch Island Flutes. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. So thank you for being our guest today.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And I'd like to know, where are you from originally?
I'm originally from southeastern Massachusetts, from the city of Taunton. I lived there till I was 18, and then I graduated from high school, and I have not gone back to live there. I enlisted in the Air Force and spent 4 years in the Air Force, and have never gone back to live there. But presently, I'm living here in Minot, Maine.
And how long have you been here in Maine?
I've been here in Maine since 1971. We came here from Colorado.
Very nice. And what did you do for a career during that time that you were living in Maine?
I came here from Colorado. I was a school teacher, and I worked in Auburn starting in 1971, and I spent 30 years teaching high school in Auburn, Maine, having retired in 2001, and still continuing, though, as a substitute teacher.
And what subjects do you teach in high school?
I taught social studies, physical education, health, a variety of courses.
So that's a big jump from high school teaching to wooden flutes that are handcrafted by you. So how did that evolve?
It's kind of interesting. I was looking for an instrument to play. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew what I wanted. I wanted an instrument that I did not have to sit down and read sheet music from, that had a certain tone, a certain voice to it, and I didn't know what the instrument was going to be. I fooled around with harmonica, keyboard, recorder, and they were okay, but they didn't satisfy my needs. And in 1997, we were at the Yarmouth Clam Festival. We were walking about the place, and we heard this music, and I stopped and I said, "What was that?" And I followed the sound of the music, and there was a vendor there who was selling flutes and selling his music, and it's the first time that I heard this Native American style flute being played. And I bought Werner John was a vendor. I bought his CD, and that began my journey. I got the CD home, played it for a while, and eventually, I bought my first flute from Tim Spotted Wolf, and off I went.
By the way, Peter Kelliher has his own CD, and I love it. He gifted one to me. I listen to it all the time. So now, so you have this interest in flute music, and how do you jump from that to decide that you're going to handcraft your own flutes? And how do you learn this technique, and where do you get the instruments to do it?
Well, I got the flute from Tim Spotted Wolf, played it for a number of months, and as it happens with flutes, these particular flutes, people want more than one, and I started thinking I had some free time. I had a workshop, and I said, well, maybe I'd like to try my hand at making a flute. Other people make them, so why not I? And so I started out, and by trial and error, I experimented, and I made my first flute, my second one, and progressively, each flute, I think, improved, and I learned my craft. I did a lot of reading. The internet at the time was really not active and was not accessible. So pretty much it was trial and error and experimenting and trying to look at other flutes that I had seen and trying to decipher how they were made. And eventually, you know, I honed my craft, I got better at it, and eventually, after a few years, I had people starting to ask me about the flutes, and I said, well, maybe I'll start doing this at craft fairs. And so after a few years, I started becoming a vendor at various craft fairs. I've worked craft fairs all over New England, even went down to South Carolina for a craft fair. And I enjoyed doing the craft fair. It was fascinating meeting different people and introducing them to flutes. And it was part of my journey with the music of the Native American style flute.
Now I noticed that, are they all the same type of wood, or are they different woods?
Oh, they're all different woods. I've got such a smorgasbord of wood at home. Redwood, cherry, walnut, you name it. And it's fun experimenting with the different types of woods. But I seem to be partial to the redwood and cherry.
Now when you find a piece of wood that you want to handcraft a flute from, does it like speak to you? Because when I was in Italy, a lot of people told me that the marble statues spoke to them before they carved them out of the marble. Did you have a similar experience?
Not as much as that, but I'm always searching for wood and looking for wood, and I'll see a piece of wood, and I've had people offer me wood, say, oh, Peter, I've got a piece of wood for you. And it just has evolved. And when we travel, I always seek out wood. I recall a story when we were in California. I've got a good supply of redwood now. We were traveling Route 1, the coastal route in California, and suddenly my wife says, turn right, turn right. And I turned up this wooden drive, which was gravel. I got up on top of this hill, and it must have been 2 or 3 acres. It was a woodlot processing center for redwood. I spent about 2 hours there, and I wound up coming home on the plane with a whole armful of redwood.
That's great. You told me previously that each flute plays a single key, is that correct?
That's correct.
So starting with the little flute at that end, what key does that play?
This one here, which is, that is a Western red cedar, and that plays in the key of D.
Now, and I love this about Peter because I asked him if he prepared any musical selections for this broadcast, and he said no, he likes to be inspired. So I wondered if you could play just something for us on the small flute.
Sure.
Would you do that for us? Just beautiful. Thank you. Haunting almost. Did it have a name, or were you just inspired to play that?
It's just what's in my heart. You know, the music just comes out. Different times of the day, depending how I feel, how my emotions are, it more or less dictates to me how I play. Some songs are mournful, others are bright and happy. It depends on the time of day. I learned to play, this is kind of interesting, I basically learned how to play in the winter of 1998, and that's when we had the ice storm. And we were without power for 2 weeks, and I had just got my first flute, and I played by the hour in a darkened house. We had a wood stove. I used to play till 10, 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning in complete darkness, and it was very serene. Even though we had no power, it was inspiring.
It has to be very therapeutic as well.
Oh yes, it is. You cannot play these instruments without being relaxed. Some people I know, in fact, I've sold flutes to people who purchase a flute or want a flute because it does you have to relax. And some of these people, have trouble relaxing, so it's a vessel to allow them to get into a state of relaxation.
That's wonderful. Now, do people hire you individually to come and play at, say, weddings or memorial services? Because I think that would be so unique and wonderful.
I have played. It's a hobby. I'm not interested in making a lot of money. I have played at funerals. I played at schools. In fact, just this past week, I played for some kindergartens. It's about 40 or 50 kindergartens.
How did they react?
Oh, they were precious. They were so spontaneous, and they get so excited. And I also, in my performance with the kindergartners, I had drums. I had a flute that they could play, and I played a duet with one of the kindergartners. And I had a drum that they played along with me, and snap sticks, which is a Native American instrument. And I had a rain stick, and they get that age gets so excited, and they're so spontaneous. It's very, very enjoyable.
Didn't you tell me also that you often bring flutes to high school when you're subbing in high school, and the high school students really love it too?
Always. I'm always walking through the halls with a flute over my back, and sometimes I don't have it. I'll have students go by and say, "Mr. Kelliher, where's your flute?"
Oh,
And I'll be in a classroom, and things will be kind of quiet and so forth, and at a certain time, they'll say, "Well, play a song for us, Mr. Kelliher." And I'm more than happy to. And
That's wonderful.
Students, they seem to enjoy it.
That's wonderful. Tell me about the second flute. Now, what wood is the second flute made from?
This second flute is made from cherry. In fact, this is probably one of my favorite flutes, one of my early flutes. I used to number them. This is flute number 147. And this particular one is cherry. This is my logo, and it's a broken arrow.
And why do you use the broken arrow for a logo?
I was meandering through some books on Native American logos and symbols, and I came across an arrow, and I used a straight arrow for a long time, but then I discovered a book that said the broken arrow is a symbol of peace for Native American people.
Beautiful.
And so I went from the logo of a straight arrow to a broken arrow, and that's why I use a broken arrow, because it's an instrument of peace.
It is an instrument of peace. And what key is this particular flute?
This one is in the key of G sharp.
So will you play something for us?
Certainly.
so pretty. So lovely. Thank you. It just puts you in a mood, doesn't it?
I'm entranced by the sound.
I am as well. No, is that the flute you used for the opening music for my show? Because it sounded similar.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, oh good. I have a
Yes.
good ear, I guess. Yeah, I'm happy to know that. And I'm happy you played one of your favorite flutes. How many flutes approximately do you think that you've made over the course of this journey of yours?
Probably between 200 and 300.
That's amazing. And now you make them, but do you also teach people how to play them?
I have, not recently, but a number of years ago, I was teaching adult ed classes in Auburn.
Okay.
And I did it for, I think, 3 years. And we used to meet, 3, 4 nights. And it was a pretty comprehensive program. I introduced them to the history of the flute, how the flutes are made, how you play them. And it was very, very enjoyable. And I did it for approximately 3 years, and I had such a smorgasbord of people. And they all had something in common. They were seeking music, and some had never heard a flute before. Some knew about the flutes, and some had their own flutes, and were just interested in becoming a more improved player.
You know, I've had a lot of musical guests on this show, and I've asked all of them this question about how do you feel about the importance of music for young people? Because a lot of musical programs have been cut in public school systems. How do you feel about it?
It's a tragedy. Music, the arts, is always the first thing to take a hit in schools. And that's happening now with a lot of the budgets. But what's interesting is it's so sad because they're finding that people who are involved in the arts, in drama, in music, in chorus, whatever it is, that they're more confident, they're more successful when they leave school, and somehow music brings happiness to people. And when a young person learns this at a young age, it stays with them the rest of their life. It's kind of interesting because when I was vending at the craft shows, I had so many people, so many adults say to me, oh, I don't have any musical talent. And I know from my experiences that everyone has musical talent. It's a question of finding that mode that they can get involved in with music. But everybody has music inside of them. And the arts, that's what was nice about the arts. The arts draw that out, especially for some students who are withdrawn, who are quiet, who are shy. I've seen many students who are very, very shy, but playing an instrument, it draws them out.
Well, you know, Peter Kelliher says everyone has music inside of him. I don't think any of us would argue that he really has music inside of him. And I wonder if you would gift us again with another flute and tell us which wood is this flute made from, the third flute.
This particular flute is redwood. On my journey to California that I was telling you about, I got some wood from this wood lot. And this is one of the pieces of wood that I got from the wood lot. And they were so gracious. They didn't charge me for the wood. They showed me a pile of wood and they said, help yourself. And I spent almost an hour there picking over the wood. And that came from that particular wood lot. And the man who was so kind to me, he only asked I send him a CD. He had a daughter who was probably around 10 years old. I sent him a CD and I also sent him a flute.
Oh,
and
that was so kind of you.
He was so nice. He sent me a nice letter. In fact, I was out there a second time, and I picked up a second load of wood the second time I was out in California. But this is a redwood flute.
We'd love to hear it. What key is it in?
This is in the key of G.
beautiful. You know, how amazing is it that Peter Kelliher heard this beautiful music, decided that he wanted to play the flute, ended up making them, handcrafting them by hand, playing them, making CDs. I think it just proves that anything is possible if your heart is in it. I think you're such an inspiration. And I wanted to ask you, how do you make these wonderful flutes?
Well, you start out basically with a piece of wood. Like, for example, the wood on these two arms. If this were wood, I could make a flute out of the two pieces. You start out with two pieces. And what I do is, some of the flutes you can see the pieces. This one you cannot. I'm not sure if you can on any of these others, but you can here. This is two pieces.
Okay.
And I use a router to make the bore. And there's two bores. There's one bore here, and there's a stop up here. There's a plug here, and there's a bore also inside here. And so what you do is your air comes in through here, comes out a hole here, travels along a channel, and the reed is this edge right here.
Okay.
And that's where the sound comes from. The tone comes from the air hitting that edge.
Okay.
And the air comes out this hole and also goes down inside the bore. And the most difficult part of making the flute is the sound hole. You got to be very, very, very careful, very delicate. Sometimes I say just one more movement of the chisel on the sandpaper, and the flute is gone.
Have you lost a number of flutes
Oh yes,
that way?
they keep me warm in the winter in the fireplace. But that's part of making flutes. By experimenting, you learn. Even though sometimes I know better, there are times that I'm in a hurry and I'm using a chisel, I'm using sandpaper, and you go too deep and you lose the whole flute. And I have a couple at home that I keep on the wall to remind me when I'm making flutes to be patient.
Smart. That's very smart.
Because you have to have patience to make a flute such as this.
And how long approximately would it take to make a flute like the one you're holding in your hands?
Oh, it varies. It depends on the wood. Probably, I'm going to say probably 6 to 8 hours if you add up the total time. There's a lot of labor-intensive task involved with this. Some of the tasks take just a matter of a few minutes, others are longer. I started out making flutes by hand using chisels, scrapers, what have you, and I eventually gave that up because I was having difficulty with my wrist and I was fearful of carpal tunnel. So I went to using a lathe. Now I use a lathe, but still the final process is done by hand. The shaping and the sanding, the finer type things are done by hand.
Well, we're almost at the end of our program, but we have time for one more short little song. If you would gift us with this flute and tell us what key it's in and what is the wood.
This particular flute is in the key of E. This is a Douglas fir. Of the 4 flutes I have here, this is the largest bore. And this is naturally, this is a deeper sounding flute than the others.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you to my guest, Peter Kelliher, a Maine treasure. Thank you, everyone, for watching. You asked for it. Sweet dreams. you.
Thank you.